Hello everyone, this is Fanindra, the Zoology faculty, and today's topic which we are going to discuss is human health and disease. And from this topic in the NEET examination, we are going to get around 3 questions in the NEET examination, that is around 12 marks. So what is meant by health? Health is nothing but a state of body and mind, a state of body and mind where there is a balance of certain humors. What is meant by a humor? Humor is nothing but a body fluid. According to the early Greeks and Hippocrates and Indian Ayurveda system of medicine, the persons with black bile, what is meant by a black bile, the body fluids, if they are not in a good condition, these persons would have hot personality, in the sense their body will have high temperatures and they would have fevers. But this is not completely acceptable. This was a pure reflective thought. It was not acceptable by the people. After the discovery of blood circulation by William Harvey, and as well as the thermometer, this theory was totally disproved, and this theory is called as good humor hypothesis. If the humors are in a good condition, we are in a good healthy condition, and if the humors are in a bad condition, and we are not said to be healthy. But this theory was completely disproved by these two people for the discovery of, after the discovery of blood circulation and as well as the discovery of the thermometer. Okay. So what does health mean and what systems are involved in maintaining the health? The systems that are involved in maintaining the health is the mind influences through neural system and endocrine system, our immune system, and that our immune system maintains our health. This is a very important statement in the NCERT. Mind influences through immune system and mind influences through the neural system and endocrine system, the hormones, and these will influence the immune system, and our immune system will maintain our health. So hence mind and mental state can affect our health. Mind and mental state can affect our health. Now, how the health is being disturbed in our body, or what are the different sources, like what are the different factors for the health to be disturbed? Let us take health is affected by. So what are the factors that are affecting the health? The first one is genetic disorders. The disorders through which, like, there are some deficiencies in the genes, there are some alterations in the genes, mutations in the genes, chromosomal aberrations, genetic disorders, chromosomal disorders, which we are getting from our birth. Now these disorders are going to affect our health from the birth. As well as infections, the microbes that are entering into our body in our day-to-day lifetime, these microbes will enter into our body, the pathogens enter into our body and cause some diseases in our body. That is nothing but infections. And lifestyle including the food and water we take, right, the physical exercises we do, and the junk foods we eat, or the habits, like bad habits which we have, like smoking, drinking and all, alcohol consumption, all these are going to affect our health. Okay, so this is the first introduction part which is given in your textbook. Okay, now when you define the health properly in a scientific way, health does not simply mean absence of a disease or physical fitness. Absence of a disease, if disease is absent, we are not said to be healthy, or if physical fitness is absent, we are not said to be healthy. These are also some of the factors which makes us healthy, but only in the absence of these physical fitness and diseases, we are not said to be healthy. What is actual meaning of the health is a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being. A state of complete physical, mental and social well-being is called as a health. Now, if the person is healthy, what happens if the person is healthy? If the person is healthy, it increases productivity because he will be more efficient at the work. He will do his work properly, more efficiently. So if the work is done more efficiently, the productivity of the company gradually increases, and economic prosperity, the economic value of that company also gradually increases. And health increases longevity of the people. Longevity, what is longevity? The lifespan of the people also increases with the help of this health, and reduces infant and maternal mortality. What is meant by infant mortality? Infant death rate. What is maternal mortality? Mother's death rate. So this infant mortality, IMR, infant mortality rate, and MMR, the maternal mortality rate, gradually decreases if the people are very healthy. Now what factors will maintain us healthy? One is balanced diet, the food which we take, personal hygiene, the cleanliness which we maintain, and regular exercises, physical exercises every day are very important to maintain good health. In this, yoga has been practiced by many people. This helps in achieving physical health and as well as the mental health. And awareness about the diseases, like how the disease or how the disease causing organisms or pathogens will enter into our body, and if these disease causing organisms enter, what care we have to take, or how to avoid the entry of these disease causing organisms into our body. This is also very important to maintain our health in a correct way. Then awareness about different body functions, like what is the physiology or what are the functions of different parts of our body. Vaccination or immunization, we'll discuss this vaccination, immunization. Proper disposal of waste, like keeping our home, ourselves and our areas and our surroundings very clean, as well as control of vectors. What are vectors? Like mosquitoes, which will spread the disease causing organisms from one body to other body, and as well as maintenance of hygienic food and water resources. The food which we take should be very hygiene, and the water which we use, which we take, it should be very hygiene, because there are so many diseases which are transferred to our body through contaminated food and water. So we have to be very careful while we are taking foods and water and in some external places where we don't know. We have to be very careful there, right? Now, when functions, like when, for example, if you have maintained all these things, and even if you maintain all these things, sometimes if our body functions are not occurring properly, if we are having some disorders, like we are having some we are not having the normal functions in our body, then we can say that we are affected by the disease. So when functioning of one or more organ systems of the body are adversely affected, if it is affected, it's not functioning properly, or characterized by various signs and symptoms. So how do you say that you are not healthy? Because we show some symptoms, we show some signs that appear outside, which tells us that we are not healthy. Sometimes we get fever, the temperatures are very high, we get swellings, or sometimes we get body pains, and sometimes we feel dizziness, sometimes we feel unconsciousness. Lot of things happen. Because of this, we can say these are the symptoms which tells us that we are suffering from some disease. Now, so we are not healthy and we have a disease. And these diseases can be broadly classified into two types. What are those? Infectious diseases and non-infectious diseases. Infectious diseases are also called communicable diseases. Non-infectious are non-communicable diseases. So what are these infectious diseases? These diseases will spread from one person to other person very easily. Whereas non-infectious diseases will not spread from one person to other person, but they spread through some hosts or vectors or some other food or water, whatever it may be. Okay, these are infectious and non-infectious diseases. In the infectious diseases, the infectious disease which is fatal. What is meant by fatal? Fatal is nothing but which leads to death. The infectious disease which leads to death is nothing but AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, which is caused by HIV. We'll discuss it in future. And the non-infectious diseases which is fatal is cancer. Cancer is a non-infectious disease which is fatal to our body. Sometimes even drug and alcohol abuse are also very important. They adversely affect or they disturb our health continuously, right? This is the next page. Then, so when you go with the common diseases in humans, so what are the different types of diseases generally? What are the day-to-day diseases which we generally hear about? So we are discussing about few common diseases, some of them in this particular chapter. Mainly you are going to discuss about the causative of that particular disease, which pathogen is going to cause the disease, and how this disease enters into our body or pathogen enters into our body, that is the mode of infection, as well as what are the symptoms of this particular disease, like how can you know that we have this sort of disease. We are going to discuss all these things in this particular chapter. So some of the common diseases, mainly they are caused by bacteria, the microbes, viruses, fungi, protozoans and helminths. We are going to discuss about all these disease causing organisms and their disease here. Now these disease causing organisms are known as, they are called as pathogens. What are pathogens? The disease causing organism is called as a pathogen. Pathogen, and study of this disease is called as pathology. Okay. Then most parasites are therefore pathogens, as they cause harm to the host by living in or them. It's a very important statement. Most parasites are therefore pathogens. All parasites are not pathogens. most parasites are pathogens, because all parasites will not cause disease. They may live on our host body or live inside our host body, but may not affect us. But the parasite which lives in our body, which affects us, which causes disease, those are nothing but the pathogens. This is very important statement which you have to remember. Most parasites are therefore pathogens, not all. If the statement is given as all parasites are pathogens, that's a wrong statement. Most parasites are pathogens, and these pathogens, they can enter into our body, they multiply in our body, and they interfere with normal vital activities in our body, causing some disorders in our body or deficiencies or some adverse effects in normal functioning of our body. Okay. Now these pathogens, when they enter into our body, the pathogens will try to adapt to the situations which are present in our body. Because the pathogens, the body, like we have so many mechanisms, we have skin, we have mucous membrane, we produce fevers, we have inflammation, swellings, and we have the immune system present in our body which attacks these pathogens. But still, these pathogens, they have some adaptations when they enter into our body. They develop some adaptations so that they can survive very easily in our body. For example, we have HCl in our stomach, which is a very strong acid with a pH of 1.8 to 2. But there are some microbes which also survive in this particular HCl like this, because they develop some cysts around them so that they can easily survive in our HCl in the stomach. Okay, so these are the adaptations where they can survive at low pH and resisting the various digestive enzymes. Okay. So in this particular chapter, we are going to study about some different types of diseases, the pathogens which affects our body. The first, when we are going to discuss about the bacterial diseases. In the bacterial diseases, the first disease which we are going to discuss is typhoid. Typhoid is a very dangerous disease again. It is caused by the bacteria known as Salmonella typhi. Now, how does this typhoid enters into our body? This typhoid bacteria enters into our body through contaminated food and water. Now, when it enters into our body through contaminated food and water, where does it enter? It enters into our small intestine. It's very important. It enters into our small intestine through our food. In the small intestine, they affect our small intestine, and what are the symptoms which are being produced by the typhoid bacteria is high fever, sustained high fever. Frequently we get fever, that is around 39 to 40 degrees centigrade. Weakness, we'll be very weak, because if we have such a high temperatures, we'll obviously become weak. And stomach pain, which is a most important symptom, the stomach pain which affects us. Constipation is difficulty in eliminating the fecal matter. Difficulty in defecation is called as a constipation. Then headache, again a very important symptom of typhoid. And loss of appetite. Appetite is hunger. We lose our hunger. These are all the different symptoms of the typhoid disease. In some conditions, in severe cases, intestinal perforations and death. There are small holes or punctures which are being formed in our intestine, which also may lead to death. Okay. These are all the symptoms of the typhoid fever. And this typhoid fever, a very important part which is confirmed by a test called as Widal test. Widal test is the confirmatory test for testing the Salmonella or typhoid bacteria which is present in our body. It's a blood test. Now, in the typhoid, in the medicine, there is a classic case. We study about Mary Mellon, a lady called Mary Mellon, and she was nicknamed as a Typhoid Mary. She was a cook by the profession. She was a cook, but she was a carrier of the typhoid, an asymptomatic carrier of the typhoid. She was a carrier. She was not affected by the disease, and even she could not show any symptoms of that particular disease. So she was an asymptomatic carrier. So, but as she was a cook, she was preparing food for many people. She used to spread these disease to the different people, right? So, as she was a symptomatic carrier, and for several years, she spread the typhoid disease, and later she was totally abandoned. She was thrown in some particular island, and then she was dead actually. Okay, so that's about the classic case of typhoid in the medicine, where we discuss about Mary Mellon, and she is nicknamed as Typhoid Mary. She was an asymptomatic carrier of the typhoid pathogen. Okay, then the next disease which we are going to discuss is pneumonia. Pneumonia is also one of the bacterial disease, and this is caused by the bacteria like Streptococcus pneumoniae and Haemophilus influenzae. Streptococcus pneumoniae and Haemophilus influenzae, these are the two bacteria which causes pneumonia. Now, in the pneumonia, mainly the alveoli of the lungs are infected. In the alveoli, the lungs are filled with some fluids. The sacs which are present in the lungs, they are filled with some fluids. Now, how does this pneumonia enters into our body? It is through droplets. We call it as a droplet infection. That is through sneezes. When we cough or when we sneeze, some droplets are released into the atmosphere. These are nothing but aerosols and released by an infected person, or by sharing glasses and utensils with an infected person. This pneumonia will be spreading from one person to other person. The mode of infection is through droplet infection. Now, what are the problems or what are the symptoms which we produce during this pneumonia? Mainly in infection, the alveoli, very important statement, already a NEET question. Alveoli get filled with fluid, leading to severe problems in respiration. So, when alveoli are filled with fluid, there is no exchange of gases, and if there is no exchange of gases, the fluids, the respiration does not take place, and we face some difficulties during the respiration. Okay, and the symptoms, like what are the symptoms of the pneumonia? Fever, chills, and then cough and headache. These are the 4 symptoms of pneumonia. In severe cases, again like typhoid, in severe cases, the lips and fingernails turn grey to bluish in color. This was a question which was already given in the NEET examination. In severe cases, lips and fingernails turn grey to bluish in color. This is one of the major symptoms of the pneumonia. So, these are about pneumonia, and there are 3 more bacterial diseases which are given in your textbook: dysentery, bacillus dysentery, and plague, Yersinia pestis or Pasteurella pestis, and diphtheria, which is caused by Corynebacterium diphtheriae. So, these are the pathogens which are causing dysentery, plague, and the diphtheria. Okay, these are all the more bacterial diseases which are present, which are given in our textbook. So, you have to remember the pathogens of these: dysentery, bacillus dysentery, plague is caused by Pasteurella pestis or Yersinia pestis, and diphtheria is caused by Corynebacterium diphtheriae, which is a pathogen, which is a bacteria that causes this diphtheria disease. And there is a vaccine called DPT vaccine, diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus, which is also called as a triple antigen, which is responsible for giving protection to these diphtheria. And pertussis is also a bacterial disease, Bordetella pertussis. A pathogen called Bordetella pertussis causes pertussis. Tetanus is also a bacterial disease which is caused by Clostridium tetani. So, for these 3 diseases, this is a vaccine which is called as a triple antigen. Okay. So, these are about the bacterial diseases which are present in our body. The next, when we are going with the viral diseases, in the viral diseases, the first disease which we are going to discuss is common cold. The common cold, there are many different strains of the virus in the common cold, because that's the reason we have common cold very frequently in our body. Now, the viruses which cause common cold are rhinoviruses. These are the group of viruses which causes the common cold. And the very important statement here: one of the most infectious human ailments or human diseases. One of the most infectious human ailments or human diseases is common cold. Now, what part in our body does the common cold affect? Common cold infects nose and the respiratory passage, but not the lungs. There was a question in the NEET examination before giving a comparison between the pneumonia and the common cold. So, pneumonia also affects the respiratory tract, common cold also affects the respiratory tract, but pneumonia affects lungs, but common cold does not affect lungs. It only affects the respiratory passage, but the lungs are not affected inside the common cold. Okay. Then the common cold is characterized by, what are the symptoms of the common cold? Okay, before going to the symptoms, what is the mode of infection of the common cold? The droplets again resulting from droplets are nothing but the sneezes or the cough, the droplets which are coming out from our body, and these droplets will spread the disease either directly is transmitted through contaminated objects such as pens, books, cups, doorknobs, computer keyboards or mouses. Through these articles, even the viruses are going to spread, as we have seen in the COVID also, like the same way these are going to spread like this. Now, what are the symptoms of this disease? Nasal congestion. Congestion is like the blocking of the nasal passage, and discharge. We have some fluids which are coming out of our nose, which is called as discharge. Sore throat. We have some irritations in our throat, which is sore throat. Hoarseness, our voice is completely rough, and cough, and as well as headache. These are and finally the tiredness, because cold, when we have lot of tiredness. These are all the symptoms of the common cold, which are caused by the viruses, the group of viruses called rhinoviruses. And what is the incubation period? How much long the common cold stays in our body? It is around 3 to 7 days. So these are about the symptoms of the viral disease in our textbook, NCERT textbook, which is nothing but the common cold. Okay. So we have discussed about the bacterial disease, and we also have discussed about the viral disease. Right. Let us see the next page. Okay, this is the next page. After the common cold, we have a disease which is caused by a protozoan. So we have seen the bacterial disease, we have seen the viral diseases. Now let us see about the protozoan diseases. Protozoans. In the protozoan diseases, the most important disease which we are going to discuss here is malaria. Malaria, it's a protozoan. In the malaria, we have different types of malarial parasite. Actually, what is a malarial parasite here? The malarial parasite, the protozoan, which is nothing but the Plasmodium. Plasmodium is a protozoan which causes malaria. In this Plasmodium, we have different types of species. We have Plasmodium vivax, Plasmodium malariae, Plasmodium falciparum, and Plasmodium ovale. We have different types of Plasmodiums. Plasmodium vivax is going to cause a disease called as benign tertian malaria. Benign tertian malaria, which is going to cause a disease, or which we are going to get the fever for every 48 hours, which is nothing but benign tertian malaria. Whereas Plasmodium malariae is going to cause quartan malaria, where we are going to get this fever for every 72 hours. We are going to get the fever, so it is called as a quartan malaria. Whereas Plasmodium ovale is also called as mild tertian malaria. The most important pathogen in India, in vivax is in India, mild tertian malaria, which is also going to cause a fever for every 42 to 48 hours. And finally, Plasmodium falciparum. Plasmodium falciparum is the most dangerous Plasmodium parasite, which is going to cause malignant malaria. Or it is also called cerebral malaria, which causes, because malignancy, what is meant by malignancy? Which spreads from one place to other place. Now these malignant malaria, it is going to spread to different parts of our body, mainly to cerebrum, mainly to brain, and it is going to affect our brain, cerebrum, and that leads to death. So that's the reason Plasmodium falciparum, which is causing the malignant malaria, is very fatal. What is fatal? Which leads to death, right? So these are the 4 different types of Plasmodium parasites which are going to cause the different types of malarial diseases. Out of which here we are going to discuss about one of the symptoms of the malaria. So Plasmodium falciparum is most serious. This is very important line, and even can be fatal. Right. So when we discuss about the malarial parasite, let me show you a diagram where you can see, you can just understand how does the malarial parasite enters into our body. Now if you look at this particular diagram, when a mosquito bites, when the mosquito bites a human being, The sporozoites, what are sporozoites? The sporozoites are the infective stages of the plasmodium to the man, because these sporozoites develop inside the mosquito, inside the mosquito's body, and these sporozoites will settle in the salivary glands of the mosquito. Now, whenever the mosquito bites, the mosquito releases its saliva into our body. Why? Because the mosquito's saliva do have an anticoagulant called as heparin, because when the mosquito sucks the blood, there is a chance of this blood to get clotted when it comes out of our body. So, to prevent this clotting, the mosquito's saliva do have an anticoagulant. So, because of that, the mosquito will release its saliva into our body. So, whenever the mosquito is releasing its saliva into our body, through the saliva, these sporozoites will enter into our body. So, what are the infective stages to human? The infective stages to human are sporozoites. Now, these sporozoites will enter into our body and stays in the blood for half an hour, and they enter into the liver. First, they will enter into the liver. In man, the malarial parasite, the plasmodium is undergoing the asexual cycle. So, that is the reason the man is called as a secondary host for the malarial parasite. Man is a secondary host. Mosquito, female Anopheles mosquito is a primary host. It's a vector-borne disease. So, here once it enters into the liver, in the liver it undergoes asexual cycle, and then it produces number of the stages present in the liver. Now, these stages, when the liver cell burst, hepatocyte burst, now these stages will enter into the RBC. They will enter into the RBC. Now, in the RBC, they undergo a cycle again called as erythrocytic cycle. Now, in the RBC, they produce some specialized stages called as gametocytes. These are the gametocytes. The gametocytes are developed inside the RBC. Even in the RBC, the malarial parasite undergoes asexual cycle. It's an erythrocytic cycle. Now, finally, the gametocytes are the stages which are produced from the RBC. The RBC burst and release the gametocytes outside. Now, these gametocytes, when the mosquito bites again, the gametocytes will enter into the mosquito's body. In the mosquito's body, inside the crop of the mosquito, the gametocytes, there are two different types of gametocytes, macrogametocytes and microgametocytes. Macrogametocytes will develop into macrogamete, which is nothing but a female gamete. Microgamete, which is a gametocyte, develops into microgamete, which is a male gamete. Now, the male and female gametes will undergo fertilization inside the mosquito's gut. Very, very important. Inside the mosquito's crop, the fertilization takes place. Because, so mosquito, we have sexual reproduction, and the humans, we have asexual reproduction. Mosquitoes are nothing but the primary host for the malarial parasite, whereas the humans are the secondary host for the malarial parasites. Okay. So, because mosquitoes have sexual reproduction and humans have asexual reproduction. Now, finally, from the zygote, the zygote divides by meiosis and mitosis and produces the stages called as sporozoites. These sporozoites will settle down in salivary glands of mosquito, which is a previous NEET question. And again, when a mosquito bites a new host, these sporozoites will enter into the host, and then the same cycle continues. Okay. Now, there is a very important point before this, like the point, all the story what we have discussed right now, this is given here. The most important thing which you have to remember is the rupture of RBCs is associated with the release of a toxic substance called hemozoin. Hemozoin. What is hemozoin? Hemozoin is a toxic substance which is produced from the hemoglobin after the rupture of RBC. This hemoglobin is responsible for the chillness and high fever in our body, and which reoccurs for every 3 to 4 days. This is very important. And how many hosts are present in the malarial life cycle? There are two hosts. One is the female Anopheles mosquito, which is a vector, and as well as the humans. So female Anopheles mosquito, so always female mosquitoes will suck blood, whereas male mosquitoes will suck plant juices. Female Anopheles mosquito is the primary host of the malarial parasite. Female Anopheles mosquito is the primary host, whereas humans are the secondary hosts, because In female Anopheles mosquito, sexual reproduction takes place, whereas in humans, asexual reproduction takes place. So that's about the life cycle of the malarial parasite. Very important part. Okay. The next protozoan after malarial parasite is Entamoeba histolytica, which causes a disease called as amoebic dysentery, or it is also called as amoebiasis. It's called amoebic dysentery, or it is also called as amoebiasis right now. So this amoebic dysentery is also caused by protozoan parasite, but here it affects our large intestine. Typhoid bacteria affects our small intestine. Amoebic dysentery, it affects our large intestine. Now what is the mode of infection here? The mode of infection is again through contaminated food and water, right? And the houseflies act as mechanical carriers here, because housefly will carry these pathogen, the eggs of this particular pathogen. What are the symptoms of this disease? Again, constipation, feeling difficulty in defecation, eliminating of fecal matter, abdominal pain, we have pain in abdomen and cramps, and then stools with excess mucus and blood clots. Stool is nothing but the fecal matter, which consists of excess mucus and sticky, and as well as blood clots also can be seen in the stool. So these are the symptoms of amoebiasis, amoebic dysentery, one of the protozoan parasite. The next comes the helminth parasites. In the helminth parasites like platyhelminthes and aschelminthes, we are not discussing about the platyhelminthes here. Platyhelminthes, Taniasis, tapeworm we have discussed in animal kingdom. Now here we are going to discuss about the helminth parasites of aschelminthes. The first one is Ascaris, which is also called as a common roundworm, and the second one is Wuchereria, which is called as a filarial worm or filarial worm. Now the first disease which we are going to discuss is Ascariasis. Ascariasis. Now Ascariasis again is caused by the Ascaris lumbricoides. Now how does this Ascariasis again enters into our body? This Ascariasis also enters into our body through contaminated food and water, vegetables, fruits, etc. Again through contaminated food and water. Now this, what are the symptoms of this Ascariasis? Internal bleeding, muscular pain, fever, anemia, loss of blood, blockage of the intestinal passages. And the eggs of these Ascaris lumbricoides are eliminated through fecus of an infected person, again through contaminated soil, water and plants. It is going to enter into our body. This is about the Ascaris. Now, the next comes Wuchereria. Wuchereria, which causes which is a filarial worm, which causes a disease called as a filariasis. Wuchereria, there are two specific pathogens, Wuchereria bancrofti, Wuchereria malai. Two species, Wuchereria bancrofti and Wuchereria malai. These are the two species which causes Wuchereriasis or filariasis. Okay. Then the filarial worm. Now this filarial worm, how does it enter into our body? This filarial worm enters into our body through female mosquito vectors, and this mosquito is Culex mosquito. Wuchereria enters into our body through the Culex mosquito. It's a female Culex mosquito bite. Now, when this Wuchereria enters into our body, it enters into the lymphatic vessels of our body of the lower limbs and results in chronic inflammation of the organs, inflammation, swelling for the long time. Chronic is nothing but the long time, and this disease is called elephantiasis, or it is also called filariasis. Okay. In this elephantiasis or filariasis, genital organs also may be affected, resulting in gross deformities. What is meant by gross deformities? Major deformities which cannot be rectified again, which is nothing but the gross deformities. So this is about the Wuchereria or the filariasis or the elephantiasis. Okay. The next is finally the fungi, the fungal diseases, and the fungal disease which we are going to discuss here is the ringworm. The fungal disease, this ringworm is caused by Microsporum, Trichophyton, Epidermophyton. Microsporum is going to affect our skin and as well as the nails, and then Trichophyton is going to affect our hair, and then Epidermophyton is going to affect our skin. Okay, right. Now, how does this fungi again they enter into our body? What is the mode of infection of fungi? The mode of infection of fungi is through direct contact, generally acquired from soil, using towels, clothes, or even combs of the infected individuals. With the help of this fungi is going to enter into our body. Okay. Now, what are the symptoms? Like in the ringworms, there are appearance of dry scaly lesions on various parts of our body. Lesions like scaly, which produce white powdery scales and very dry. You can see in the particular picture, this is a dry scaly lesion, the fungal picture. Various parts of our body, and which parts of our body, it is going to affect our skin, it is going to affect our nails, and also it is going to affect our scalp. Okay. And what are the main symptoms of the disease? These lesions are accompanied with intense itching. There is lot of itching. Which factors are very favorable for this disease? Heat and moisture are very favorable for this disease to grow. Mainly where you can see this disease? In skin folds such as in groin or between the toes. Groin is nothing but in between the thighs, and in between the toes we are going to see this fungal disease most commonly. Okay. So, that is about the fungal diseases. So, we have seen about the bacterial diseases, we have seen about the protozoan diseases, we have seen about the viral disease, and we also have seen about the helminth parasites, and finally we have seen about the fungal disease. Okay. Now, how to maintain, like when we are suffering from the diseases, what are the remedial measures that we have to take? Mainly in this particular paragraph, it is going to explain about the public hygiene of waste and excreta, periodic cleaning. So, hygienically, if you maintain ourselves hygiene, if we maintain ourselves and our surroundings hygiene, then obviously the disease causing pathogens can be slowly eliminated. That is very, very important. As well as if you want to avoid the mosquito-borne diseases, mainly avoiding stagnation of water, cleaning of coolers and use of mosquito nets. Very important point, introducing fishes like Gambusia. It's a mosquito larvae eating fish in the ponds, and as well as spraying insecticides in ditches and swamps. This is how you can just avoid the mosquito-borne disease, mainly because there is one more disease called dengue and chikungunya, which is newly added into your syllabi. Dengue and chikungunya are caused by Aedes mosquitoes, female Aedes mosquito, Aedes aegypti, which is going to cause dengue and chikungunya diseases, okay, which are mostly affected in dengue. It is mostly affected by the reduction of the blood platelets, whereas chikungunya, it is mostly affected by the joint pains, the myalgia, the joint pains. Okay. So, that is about the remedial measures for the diseases. And finally, there are some programs where we can reduce the disease, like immunization programs. For example, there is a disease called smallpox, which is totally eradicated with the help of vaccination. Okay, by discovery of so many vaccines, now still all the biotechnological industries, they are most well versed in preparing so many different types of vaccines in order to control the different types of diseases. And there are some diseases where we have vaccines, like as I told you earlier, polio, there is a vaccine, Salk and Sabin vaccines, oral polio vaccines are there, injectable vaccines are there, diphtheria and pneumonia and tetanus. As I told you, pneumonia, pneumococcal vaccine is there. Diphtheria and tetanus, we have a vaccine called DPT. What is DPT? Diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus, which is also called triple antigen. Okay, so that's the vaccines. So vaccines are very much available, and we do have antibiotics. Discovery of antibiotics is one of the most important discovery, which also antibiotics are the substances, chemical substances produced by one microbes, mainly the bacteria, which affects the other bacteria, other microbes. Okay. So, these are the antibiotics which also reduces the diseases. Right. The next important concept after the diseases in human health and disease is immunity. So, what is meant by immunity? Ability of an organism to fight against the disease causing pathogens is called as an immunity. Ability of an organism to fight against the diseases is called as immunity, and we have a specialized system in our body which is called as immune system, with so many cells and so many organs which are present in organ systems with immune system. An immune system, we are mainly dividing this immune system into two types: innate immunity and acquired immunity. What is meant by innate? Natal is nothing but birth. The immunity which we get from the birth is called as innate immunity. So, innate immunity is a non-specific type of defense. Non-specific, it is not specific to any type of disease. It can give protection to all the different types of diseases. It's a non-specific disease which is present at the time of birth. From the birth, we do have this immunity. So, that's why it is called as innate immunity. And this innate immunity is given to us by the different types of barriers, something which are going to prevent these pathogens that enter into our body. Now, what are the barriers? There are 4 different types of barriers. What are those? One is physical barriers. Physical barriers mainly are skin. Skin is a physical barrier which does not allow any pathogen to enter into our body, because skin produces sweat, and as well as sebum, which maintains acidity, which does not allow the pathogens to enter into our body, right? As well as mucus. The mucus which is present in our epithelium in mainly the gastrointestinal tract and the respiratory tract, as well as urinogenital tract. In all these tracts we do have mucus, and this mucus does not allow the pathogens to enter into our body, because the pathogens may enter through nose, the pathogens may enter through our mouth, pathogens may enter through our urethra, pathogens may enter through our anus. So, in all these we have mucus. So, this mucus will not allow the pathogens to enter into our body. Okay. The next is physiological barriers. What are physiological barriers? Acids in the stomach, the HCl with high pH. Then saliva in the mouth. Saliva consists of an antibacterial enzyme called a lysozyme, which is an antibacterial enzyme. Lysozyme, very important enzyme, which is an antibacterial enzyme present in the saliva and as well as tears. Antibacterial enzyme, and tears from eyes also do have an antibacterial enzyme which prevents from the microbial growth. And cellular barriers, there are many cells which are present in our body, the specialized cells which prevents the pathogens or which kills the pathogens, mainly the leukocytes, the WBC of our body. In the WBC in particular, if you go, polymorphonuclear leukocytes, PMNL, which are nothing but neutrophils, we have discussed in body fluids and circulation. Neutrophils and monocytes are phagocytic cells. What are phagocytes? Which engulf the pathogens and kill those pathogens. So, it is polymorpho because neutrophils have a multi-lobed nucleus, which is a polymorphonuclear leukocytes. Then, and monocytes, which are also phagocytic. Natural killer cells, which are also a type of lymphocytes, which make some punctures or holes in the cell and then causes loss of fluids, exocytosis, and the bacteria may die or the pathogens may die. As well as macrophages, which have amoeboid movements which can perform phagocytosis. All these will destroy the microbes. These are all the different types of cells that can destroy the microbes. Now, cytokine barriers, these the cytokine, the substances which are produced by the cells, and their movement helps in the destruction of the other cells which are infected by the pathogens. Mainly the viral infected cells. Viral infected cells will produce a protein called interferons. Now, what does these interferons do? The interferons are released by the viral infected cells. Now, these interferons will not allow the other cells to get infected by the viruses. They warn the cells not to get infected by the viruses. So, these are called as the cytokine barriers. Okay. So, these are all the 4 different types of barriers which are produced by the innate immunity, which it protects us from the birth. Okay. Then, next comes to the acquired immunity, which is acquired, the name itself indicates. Acquired is the immunity which we develop during our lifetime is called as acquired immunity. In the acquired immunity, this is pathogen specific. Acquired immunity is a pathogen specific immunity because it affects only that particular pathogen, because acquired immunity is mainly based on antibodies and the B lymphocytes or T lymphocytes, and these antibodies are pathogen specific. Okay, so it affects that particular disease. In the acquired immunity, and this acquired immunity is mainly characterized by memory. Very important statement. Acquired immunity is characterized by memory because we do have memory cells which recognize the pathogen that is entering into our body. Okay. Now, in this acquired immunity, we have 2 different types of responses. One is primary immune response and the other one is secondary immune response. Primary immune response, when the pathogen enters into our body for the first time, we cannot recognize the pathogen immediately. So, this takes some time to recognize and get that pathogen killed. So this is primary immune response, which is of low intensity, very important, low intensity. But once this pathogen enters into our body can recognize this pathogen and our memory cells will keep the memory of that pathogen. And if subsequent encounter, once again the pathogen enters into our body, this pathogen, these memory cells will recognize that pathogen and kill the pathogen immediately. That is called secondary immune response, or it is also called as anamnestic response, which is of very high intensity, and because it is based on the memory. So this is about primary immune response and secondary immune response. Now the primary immune response and secondary immune response, it is mainly done by two different types of cells. One is B lymphocytes and the other one is T lymphocytes. B lymphocytes will produce an army of proteins. What are those called? These are called as antibodies, but T lymphocytes will make B lymphocytes to produce antibodies. T lymphocytes do not produce antibodies. T lymphocytes will make the B lymphocytes to produce antibodies, whereas the B lymphocytes will produce the antibodies. Okay, these are the bullets which kill our pathogens. And this antibody molecule, if you look at the antibody molecule, every antibody molecule is nothing but H2L2 with 2 heavy chains and as well as 2 light chains. This is called as a heavy chain and this is called as a light chain. Every heavy chain and light chain will have a variable region. These are the variable regions and these are the constant region. This is called as a constant region and these are called as a variable regions. Variable regions and constant regions. Now these variable regions, the place where both the variable regions end, the two arms of the Y-shaped molecule, this arm is called as FAB end, fragment antigen binding site, because this is a place where an antigen or an antibody binds with an antigen. So for an antibody molecule, how many antigen binding sites are there? There are 2. This is one and this is one, the second one. These are 2 antigen binding sites, and this part, or it is also called as N-terminal, antigen binding site is present on the N-terminal. Very important, please look at this N carefully in the textbook. Whereas the opposite end, where it binds with the lymphocyte or it is freely rotating or moving, this is called as FC end, fragment crystallizable end. Okay, this doesn't bind with an antigen, it just binds with a lymphocyte or it is freely moving. Okay, now these heavy chains and light chains, the variable regions, the antigen binding site will have a variable region of a heavy chain and the variable region of a light chain. Okay. Now, these white antibody molecule, the heavy chains and light chains, they are bounded by the disulfide bridges. They are interconnected by the disulfide bridges. Totally in the antibody molecule, there are 16 the disulfide bridges, out of which 4 are inter disulfide. This is one and this is one, this is one and this is one. 4 are inter disulfide bridges, inter, and 12 are intra, inside the antibody molecule, which are 12. 12 are intra disulfide bridges and 4 are inter disulfide bridges. This is very, very important, which you have to remember. Okay, so that's about an antibody molecule. We have different types of antibody molecules: IgA, IgM, IgE, IgG and IgD. Totally 5 different types of antibody molecules can be seen. Okay, then these B lymphocytes, the B lymphocytes which will produce antibodies, B lymphocytes will cause an immune response called humoral immune response, because B lymphocytes will produce antibodies into the blood. As they are producing antibodies into the blood is a humor, so that is called humoral immune response. Whereas the T lymphocytes will mediate the humoral immune response, so that's why the immunity possessed by the T lymphocytes is called as cell mediated immunity, which is called CMI. So if any transplantation occurs to our body, if we have the liver or kidney or heart, it is been transplanted, these transplanted organs will be rejected by our body. That is mainly because of the T lymphocytes, because T lymphocytes will have cell mediated immunity. Now in order to stop that rejection, we have to take immunosuppressants throughout our lifetime. If you take immunosuppressants throughout our lifetime, then the graft rejection can be prevented. which is because of the graft rejection is mainly because of cell mediated immunity. Humoral immune response is because of B lymphocytes, cell mediated immunity is because of T lymphocytes. Okay, that's about the immunity part. And in the immunity we have the different types of immunity called active immunity and the passive immunity. So what is meant by active and passive? If we produce antibodies from our body, then that is called as active immunity, and if we take ready-made antibodies into our body, that is called as a passive immunity. Now in the active and passive immunity, let us take for example immunity. In this we have active immunity and passive immunity. Active immunity, if we produce antibodies, it is called active immunity, and if we receive the ready-made antibodies, that is called as a passive immunity. Now this active immunity, again it is of two types, which is natural and artificial. Active immunity is of two types, natural and artificial. Passive immunity is also of two types, again natural and artificial. Passive immunity is also of two types, which is natural and artificial. Now what is natural? Naturally, if any pathogen enters into our body, if we produce antibodies to that, that is called as natural active acquired immunity. What is this immunity? This is called acquired immunity, right? So if any pathogen enters into our body, like for example chickenpox, a chickenpox virus enters into our body, we develop antibodies to that, which is called natural active acquired immunity. Whereas if we take vaccines, what is meant by a vaccine? Vaccines can be heat killed microbes or attenuated, or what is meant by an attenuated? The inactivated microbes or the inactivated toxins of the microbes will be deliberately injected into our body. When they are injected into our body, now our body will our immune system will recognize those pathogens, and the immune system will develop antibodies against that particular pathogen. Now these antibodies will have the memory. Now the next time, for the second time, if a live pathogen enters into our body, now these antibodies will go and destroy that particular pathogen. That is the use of vaccination. Vaccinations are based on the principle of prevention is better than cure, because we are preparing antibodies and keeping it safe in our body in reserve, so that if a live pathogen enters, these antibodies will readily go and kill them. That is the principle behind the vaccination. So that is artificial. We are producing antibodies, but by artificial means, so that's why it is artificial active acquired immunity. Whereas passive immunity, we are taking ready-made antibodies from some external source, which is called as passive immunity. Naturally, we get IgA antibodies through our mother's colostrum, the first milk, yellow colored milk. We get IgG antibodies through the placenta of the mother. So we are not developing these antibodies, we are getting through our mother. So that's why these are called as the natural passive acquired immunity. Whereas artificial passive acquired immunity, anti-tetanus serum, anti-snake venom. So when a snake bites our body, we take anti-snake venom, and this anti-snake venom is going to neutralize the snake's venom. Now where this anti-snake venom and anti-tetanus serum are produced? They are produced from the sheeps or goats in the laboratories. Okay, so these are preformed or ready-made antibodies which are injected into our body. So that's why it is artificial passive acquired immunity. So these paragraphs will tell us about the 4 different types of acquired immunity: active immunity, natural active acquired, artificial active acquired, natural passive acquired, artificial passive acquired. And then we have, with the help of recombinant DNA technology, we are producing the vaccines for hepatitis B from yeast by introducing the antigenic polypeptides of this pathogen into the bacteria or yeast. By recombinant DNA technology, we are producing the vaccine for hepatitis B. Okay, is that clear? Then the next comes the allergies. Allergy is an exaggerated immune response developed by our body because of some substances that are entering into our body is called as an allergy. Now what are those substances which cause allergy? These are called as allergens. So whenever allergens are entering into our body, the IgE type of antibodies are being produced in our body. Very important, IgE types. What are the examples of common allergens? Dust, pollens, animal dander, dandruff, etc. What are the symptoms of allergy? Sneezing, watery eyes, running nose, difficulty in breathing. And why do we get allergy? Allergy we get because of some chemicals called histamine and serotonin, which are produced by the mast cells. Histamine is a vasodilator, serotonin is a vasoconstrictor produced by the basophils or mast cells. Now, how do we treat allergy? Allergies are treated by taking drugs like antihistamines or adrenalines or steroids. Antihistamines or adrenalines or steroids will generally treat allergy, because as we are living in the cities, we are developing more sensitivity to the allergies, because in cities we have lot of dust and lot of mites which are available, and so we are developing sensitivity to the allergy. So here the most important thing is the IgE antibodies which are produced during this allergy. Okay, so we'll go with the next part. So autoimmunity or the immune system in the body. So autoimmunity, let us go with the immune system later. Autoimmunity, what is meant by autoimmunity? Autoimmunity, that is our immune system, generally our immune system can recognize our cells, but sometimes our immune system fails to recognize our own body cells, which is called as an autoimmunity. Autoimmune diseases. So here the examples for autoimmune diseases: rheumatoid arthritis, right? This is an autoimmune disease, which myasthenia gravis, which is an autoimmune disease. There are many autoimmune diseases which are in our body because our immune system is failed to recognize our own cells and they are just going to attack our cells. So that's why it is called autoimmune disease. Okay, then the next comes to immune system in our body. So we have so many cells and lymphoid organs and tissues and molecules called antibodies which are present in our immune system. Mainly our immune system, from where these antibodies are being produced, we call them as lymphoid organs. Here we classify them into primary lymphoid organs and the secondary lymphoid organs. Primary lymphoid organs are bone marrow and thymus, very important. Now what happens in the primary lymphoid organs? The primary lymphoid organs, the immature lymphocytes differentiate, they divide. The primary lymphoid organs will help in the immature lymphocytes. These immature lymphocytes will differentiate and into antigen sensitive lymphocytes in the primary lymphoid organs, which are nothing but the bone marrow and the thymus. And after maturation, these primary lymphoid organs will migrate to the secondary lymphoid organs. So what are the different type of secondary lymphoid organs? Nothing but spleen, lymph nodes, tonsils, and pairs, patches of small intestine. All these are nothing but the secondary lymphoid organs. Now what happens in the secondary lymphoid organs? In the secondary lymphoid organs, these will provide sites for the interaction of lymphocytes with antigens, where they proliferate. Proliferate is nothing but divide and then turn into the effector cells. So there is nothing but the primary, these are the functions of the primary and secondary lymphoid organs. You can see very clearly in the diagram, these are nothing but the lymph nodes. Please see the labeling of the diagram carefully. This is the thymus, which is just near the heart, and then these are the lymphatic vessels. Okay, so bone marrow, you know, it's a very important type lymphoid organ where the blood cells, even lymphocytes, are also produced in the bone marrow. Thymus, if you look at it, the thymus is located near the heart, beneath the breastbone, nothing but the sternum. Beneath the sternum, the thymus is being located. Actually, the thymus is large at the time of birth, but when we are growing, as the age prolongs, as the age increases, the thymus size gradually decreases. So that's the reason elders will have lesser immunity when compared with the younger people. Okay, so both bone marrow and thymus provides microenvironments for the development and maturation of T lymphocytes. For B lymphocytes, it is bone marrow. T lymphocytes, both bone marrow and as well as thymus. And the next is spleen, which is a large bean-shaped organ. It consists of lymphocytes and phagocytes. It acts as a filter for trapping the blood-borne pathogens, and it is a large reservoir for erythrocytes. And next comes to small solid structures which are called lymph nodes, which are present all along the lymphatic system. These lymph nodes will trap the microbes or antigens which are entering into our body and supply the lymphocytes there. These are nothing but the lymph nodes. Okay, so because these antigens, when they enter, they activate the lymph nodes. Then Other than this, we have a specialized system called mucosa associated lymphoid tissue in the tracts where the mucous membrane is present. What are the tracts? Respiratory tract, digestive tract, and as well as the urinogenital tract. Okay, this is about the lymphoid system, and this MALT, mucosa associated lymphoid tissue occupies around 50% of the lymphoid tissue of our body. Okay. Then the next is the very important disease which is called AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, okay, which is caused by a most important pathogen which is nothing but the HIV. And this is the syndrome. What does the syndrome mean? The syndrome is a group of diseases or group of symptoms, and it was first reported in 1981, and it has spread widely through these all 25 years, and almost more than 25 million persons were killed by this AIDS and the virus. So HIV is a human immunodeficiency virus which is belonging to a group of viruses called retrovirus, enclosing a genome called RNA genome, and the RNA which is present here is single-stranded RNA, two single-stranded RNA. Please remember, two single-stranded RNAs are present in the HIV. Okay. Then, now how does this HIV virus spreads in our body? Through sexual contact with infected persons, you all know that very well, through contaminated blood and blood products, by sharing of infected needles in the case of intravenous drug abusers, and as well as from infected mother to the child. Through placenta, but it can be prevented, you know that, right? Then, which people are at high risk of getting these viruses? Mostly the people who have multiple sexual partners and drug addicts who take drugs and who take repeated blood transfusions, and the children from the infected mother, these are at high risk of getting HIV. And this HIV is, when it enters into our body, the incubation period, the symptoms after, when HIV enters into our body, the symptoms appear after 5 to 10 years. This is the incubation period of the HIV. Now, when you look at this particular picture, you can see how the virus enters into our body. A virus, retrovirus, the RNA core enters into our body. The viral coat remains outside, but the RNA, the double single-stranded RNA, two single-strand RNA, enters into our body with the help of two reverse transcriptase enzymes. And these reverse transcriptase enzyme will convert this viral RNA into viral DNA. Now, this viral DNA incorporates or joins with our host genome and takes our genome into its control and develops its RNA again, and this RNA again is broken down into small pieces, and these RNA will develop the protein coats again. Some new viruses are being produced. So unless and until this entire process takes place, the cell is in a living condition, the cell blasts, and then the viruses are being released outside. This is how the HIV produces more and more viruses which are present in our body. Now, these HIV virus generally, where it enters, whenever it enters into our body, it mainly affects our macrophages because the macrophages are the largest cells where the virus enters into our body, and these, because the receptors present on the macrophages attract these viruses, and these macrophages will produce more number of HIV particles. So that's why the macrophages are called as HIV factories. They are called HIV factories. After macrophages, they enter into our helper T lymphocytes, because helper T lymphocytes will have CD4 receptors, cluster of differentiation molecules, and to these receptors the HIV spikes will come and bind here, the glycoproteins will bind here, and then they affect the helper T lymphocytes, and the T lymphocytes will get destroyed. When helper T lymphocytes get destroyed, helper T lymphocytes generally make the B lymphocytes to produce antibodies, and the antibody production gradually stops. So if the antibody production stops, our immune system becomes weak. When our immune system becomes weak, the pathogens that are entering into our body, many pathogens will enter into our body and try to cause so many different types of diseases, and we show different types of symptoms, and that is called syndrome acquired, which is we are getting from someone. Immuno, when we take it, our immune system gets destroyed. Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, when our immune system gets destroyed, we show so many symptoms, which is called acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Okay. Right. So what are the Symptoms of this particular HIV, this bouts of fever, repeated fever, diarrhea, the motions, and there's nothing but the weight loss because due to the decrease of the helper T lymphocytes. The different types of pathogens like mycobacterium, viruses, fungi, even toxoplasma will enter into our body and they cause diseases, right? And what is the diagnostic test for the HIV? The diagnostic test is ELISA, enzyme linked immunosorbent assay, and the confirmatory test is the PCR, polymerase chain reaction, as well as Western blot, okay. So HIV prevention, how we can prevent the HIV? You all know prevention is better than cure because there is no medicine for the HIV. So always prevention is better than cure. So how there are many organizations like NACO, National AIDS Control Organization, NGOs, non-governmental organizations which are creating lot of awareness programs to educate the people regarding the spread of HIV. Now, how to avoid the HIV? Ensuring that use of only disposable needle syringes in public and private hospitals and clinics, free distribution of condoms, controlling drug abuse, advocating safe sex, and promoting regular checkups for HIV in susceptible populations. So all these together, because HIV is not, it's a very dreadful disease by the hospital authorities and then the medical fraternities, the society, the medical fraternity. Together, they have to create awareness in the people how to avoid or how to decrease the spread of HIV, and then slowly by all of us together we can reduce this transmission of the HIV viruses or the AIDS disease. So, it's very important, don't die of ignorance because always prevention is better than cure, okay. The next comes to cancer, one of the most dreadful disease, the non-infectious disease. Cancer is a non-infectious disease, one of the most dreadful disease. Cancer, many Indians, more than 1 million Indians are suffering from cancer. Why this cancer? Mainly, it is because of oncogenic transformation of the cells. Oncogenic transformations, a cancerous transformation of the cells. All our cells, if they have some genes called as proto-oncogenes or cellular oncogenes in all the normal cells, but when these genes are altered, if some mutations occurs here, it results in the cancer. Rapid division or multiplication of the cells results in the cancer, okay. Then cancer, mainly in our body, the cells which are present in our body, the normal cells are very close together. When they are close together, they have a property called as contact inhibition. This contact inhibition does not allow these cells to divide rapidly or multiply rapidly. But when we have cancers, these cancer cells are said to lose this property called as contact inhibition. So, whenever they lose the property called contact inhibition, then slowly the cells will divide rapidly, multiply rapidly, and then form group of cells which are called as tumors. These tumors, there are two different types of tumors, benign tumors and malignant tumors. Benign tumors will stick to one particular area. They are covered by a membrane which sticks to one particular area. Whereas malignant tumors, they move from one particular area to other area. They are not covered by any membrane. They will be moving from one area to other area, spreading the cancer to different parts of our body, which is nothing but malignancy or malignant tumors. Okay, then. So, this property is called metastasis, the most feared property of the malignant tumors, because the tumors which will spread from one part of the body to other part of the body, which is dreadful, which is also fatal, which is called metastasis. Okay. Now, what are the causes of cancer? Cancer is caused by so many agents which are called carcinogens. Carcinogens are the cancer causing agents. Now, these carcinogens, they are ionizing radiations like X-rays and gamma rays, non-ionizing radiations like UV rays, and the viruses which cause cancer, the oncogenic viruses, and as well as the biological agents which like the tobacco, physical agents like all these rays, and chemical agents like the drugs which are entering into our body. Biological agents like the viruses which are entering into our body. Chemical agents like the drugs like nicotine that are entering into our body. Biological agents are the cancers, the cancer causing viruses. Now, they will enter into our body and cause some mutations in our body which results in cancer. So, what are the cells which are present in our body? What are the genes that are present which are called cellular oncogenes and or proto-oncogenes which are present in our normal cells, which when these are activated under certain conditions by these carcinogens, these cellular oncogenes or the proto-oncogenes are going to cause mutations and then leads to cancers. How to detect and diagnose the cancer? So, there are so many ways to detect the cancer. One is histopathological study, biopsy and histopathological study. Biopsy is taking a part of a tissue from our body and then studying it, studying the tissue, whether the cancer is there or not, which is called histopathology. Histo is tissue, pathology is studying about the disease, biopsy or histopathology, right. Then next comes to radiography by using X-rays and computed tomography, this is also by X-rays, and MRI, magnetic resonance imaging. Okay. In computed tomography, X-rays are being used which generates a three-dimensional image, whereas in MRI, strong magnetic fields are used and the non-ionizing radiations are used which detects these changes, pathological changes and physiological changes that are occurring in our body. Okay. There are some antibodies which detect the cancer specific antigens called monoclonal antibodies. There you can also detect the cancer cells, and there are some susceptibility tests for the cancer cells, because for example when we are exposing our body cells to some of the carcinogens, if these body cells shows response, then it means that we have to be far away from those carcinogenic agents. So, that is called as susceptibility test, which can also be done to prevent those carcinogenic exposure of the carcinogenic agents. Now, how does the cancer is being treated? Treatment of cancer. Cancer is being treated by different methods, like first is surgery. If it is a benign tumor, it can be easily removed by the surgery. Then radiation therapy. Radiation, the X-rays are continuously passed into our body, which X-rays, when these X-rays are passed, they kill the cancerous cells, but you should be very careful that these are not infecting our normal cells. Then next is immunotherapy. What is immunotherapy? Immunotherapy or chemotherapy, that is nothing but the medicines. And then there are some specialized substances called alpha interferons, which are also called biological response modifiers. These alpha interferons, because cancerous cells are not detected by our immune system, these alpha interferons will make our immune system to detect the cancer cell and destroy the cancer cells. So, these are called biological response modifiers. So, this is how by surgery, by radiation therapy, by radiotherapy or chemotherapy, by immunotherapy, we can treat cancers. Okay. That is about the non-infectious fatal disease, right. Then finally, the last part of this particular chapter, drug and alcohol abuse. In the drugs, the first one which we are going to discuss is opioids. Opioids are obtained from Papaver somniferum, which is called as poppy plant. For every drug, there are some receptors. The opioid receptors, where are these present? These opioid receptors are present in central nervous system and gastrointestinal tract. The drug which is obtained here is nothing but heroin, which is commonly called SMAC, very important, commonly called as SMAC, which is dry acetyl morphine, because morphine is obtained from poppy plant, and this morphine, diacetyl morphine modified, which is nothing but causing heroin. Now, what is the nature of the heroin? It is white, odorless, there is no smell, bitter, crystalline, powdery substance, which is obtained by acetylation of morphine. So, it is called diacetyl morphine. And where do we get this morphine? From the latex of the poppy plant, which is called Papaver somniferum. Now, how do we take this drug inside? By snorting and injection, by through mouth, through nose and as well as injection. It is a depressant and slows down the body functions. It slows down the body functions. So, it is a depressant, heroin or morphine, it is a depressant, right, and also the sedative and also the painkiller. Now, cannabinoids, these are chemicals which are produced from the plant called as a hemp plant, which is called as a cannabis sativa. And where are the cannabinoid receptors are present? The cannabinoid receptors are present mainly in the brain. Okay. Flowers, flower tops, leaves, resins of cannabis plants are used in different combinations to produce different types of drugs. What are those? Marijuana, hashish, charas and ganja. These are the 4 different types of combinations of drugs which are produced from the cannabis plant. Okay, but all these are cannabinoids. These are generally taken by inhalation and oral ingestion, taking through the mouth, and what do? They show their effect on which system of our body? They show their effects on cardiovascular system, heart and blood vessels. Okay, so this is the chemical structure of the morphine, and this is the chemical structure of a cannabinoid molecule. This is very important. Please remember the structure. Sometimes pictures can be given and the questions can be asked based on these particular pictures. The next is coca alkaloid or cocaine, which is a native of, very important, South America, which is produced from a plant called as Erythroxylum coca. Erythroxylum coca. It is commonly called coke or crack. Now, what does this coca alkaloid do? It interferes with the transport of neurotransmitter dopamine. So, it blocks the receptors which receives the neurotransmitter dopamine, so that the dopamine will remain for the longer time in the synaptic cleft. So, the person will be in a state of euphoria, in a resting state for the longer time. Okay. So, it shows its effect on, it is usually snorted. It shows its effect on central nervous system and sense of euphoria and increased energy. Excessive dosage of cocaine causes hallucinations, right? Euphoria is nothing but the state of false happiness. Hallucinations is nothing but false imaginations. Okay. Other known plants to produce hallucinations are Atropa, belladonna and datura. They will be producing a drug called as atropine. What is the drug present here? Which is called as atropine. It's a drug which causes hallucinations. There are other drugs like barbiturates, amphetamines and benzodiazepines. So, they are similar drugs. Barbiturates will induce sleep. Amphetamines will make us active. It will reduce the sleep. Again, benzodiazepines also will induce the sleep, the tranquilizers. Right. These are normally used to cope up with mental illness, depression and insomnia. What is meant by insomnia? Insomnia is sleeplessness. Sleeplessness is nothing but the insomnia. And morphine is, this is very important statement, morphine is very effective sedative which is acting as a pain killer, generally used during the surgeries, but it has been abused because so many people they use in a different way, right? Sometimes there is a folk medicine, it is used as folk medicine, religious ceremonies and rituals all over the globe. Okay, but if the people start using this continuously, it becomes a drug abuse. Okay. This is a datura plant which produces an atropine. Now, when it comes to smoking, smoking is also paving way to the hard drugs. Mainly smoking contains the tobacco. Tobacco mainly because of in the tobacco we have a nicotine, an alkaloid which is called as nicotine. And this nicotine stimulates our adrenal gland to produce adrenaline or noradrenaline into our blood circulation. Now, what does this adrenaline noradrenaline do? These both adrenaline and noradrenaline will increase our blood pressure and also increase our heart rate, which we have discussed in the body fluids and circulation. Smoking also causes cancer of lungs, urinary bladder and throat, bronchitis, the infection of bronchi and emphysema. We know alveolar walls get damaged, coronary heart disease, CAD where the heart blocks occurs, gastric ulcers, etc. And smoking increases the carbon monoxide content in our body. This carbon monoxide binds with a hemoglobin in a stable form. It's not a stable form. It's in a stable form because carbon monoxide combines with the hemoglobin to form carboxyhemoglobin. This is a stable compound which will not get dissociated, and this carboxyhemoglobin will not bind to the oxygen. So, that's the reason heme-bound oxygen gradually decreases. Heme-bound oxygen decreases. Okay, so we have a problems with respiration. Everyone knows that even in the cigarette smoking, with cigarette packet we have smoking, we have the statement written as smoking is injurious to health, but still the people are addicted for this smoking. Okay. Then adolescence and drug abuse. What is meant by adolescence? The age between 12 to 18 years is called as adolescence, where we have lot of mental and physical or psychological development. It's a vulnerable phase where we are prone to so many addictions, mainly because it's a phase of mental and psychological development. In the adolescence, mainly because of curiosity, need for adventure and experimentation, mainly because of these three things, we try to start taking the tobacco or taking the drug once. Like we just think like experimentation. We just think that okay, if we take one time, nothing happens. But once we take it, we'll get relaxed. Our body gets addicted to it. Body always, humans generally, we are at a very lot of tensions, and then once we take these drugs, we'll get relaxed, and then our body gets addicted to these drugs. But one dosage, even one dosage, is very harmful to our body. No, don't ever try this drugs. Don't ever try for the experimentation of these drugs. Okay. Then, so addiction and development, very important statement here. Addiction is a psychological attachment to certain effects such as euphoria and a temporary feeling of well-being associated with drugs and alcohol. Okay, we temporarily have a well-being, but slowly this, once we take it, slowly we increase the dosage of these things, and finally it leads to the addiction. Okay, because we lose the sensitivity of these drugs or alcohol. Then next comes to withdrawal syndrome. So whenever we do not take the drugs or we do not take the tobacco for some time, then we have a symptom called as withdrawal syndrome. If regular dosage of alcohol or drugs is abruptly discontinued, suddenly if it is being discontinued, we have a condition called as withdrawal syndrome. So what are the symptoms of withdrawal syndrome? Anxiety, shakiness, nausea and sweating are the symptoms of withdrawal syndrome. And again, when we take the drug back or when we take the tobacco back, our withdrawal symptom gets reduced. Okay. Then, now once we are addicted to these things, we lose our behavior, we lose our nature, we have reckless behavior, vandalism and violence. We drop in our academic performances, unexplained absence, lack of interest in personal hygiene, withdrawal, isolation, depression, fatigue, aggressiveness and rebellious behavior, deteriorating relationships with family and friends. We lose all the relatives, we lose all the friends because we are addicted to drugs and alcohol and as well as tobacco. Our weight changes, our appetite changes, our hobbies changes, everything will be changed here. Okay. Now, those people who are mostly drug abusers, they are prone to very serious diseases, fatal diseases like HIV and the AIDS and hepatitis B, where there is no cure for these diseases. Both AIDS and hepatitis B are chronic infections which leads to fatal. They can be transmitted through sexual contact and they also can be transmitted through the blood transfusion for the intravenous drug abusers. The people who drink alcohol mostly, they have the damaged nervous system and liver cirrhosis, accumulation of fat inside the liver. The liver is a very important organ, liver gets destroyed. Sometimes certain sports persons misuse the drugs mainly, right, in order to increase their performances. Mainly they use narcotic analgesics, anabolic steroids, diuretics and certain hormones to increase their performances. Very important here, what are the side effects of using the anabolic steroids in females? Right, you have to remember these symptoms. Masculinization, females have the male characteristics, increased aggressiveness, mood swings, we always keeps on changing our mood, depression, abnormal menstrual cycles in females, excessive hair on growth of the face, hair growth on face and body, this is also in females, enlargement of clitoris, the external genitalia, deepening of the voice in females. Whereas in males, it include acne, the pimples, as well as increased aggressiveness, mood swings, depression, reduction of size of the testicles in males, decreased sperm production, and potential for kidney and liver dysfunction, kidney and liver get spoiled, breast enlargement in males, not in the females, breast enlargement in males, premature baldness in the males, enlargement of the prostate gland size gradually enlarges. These are all the side effects in both males and as well as in females and males. So please remember, females separately and males separately, right? And finally, Premature in both males and females, premature closure of the growth centers, nothing but the epiphyseal plates of the long bones, which results in stunted growth. The growth gradually stops. Okay. Now, what are the methods for prevention and control? So, what are these methods? Like, how can you prevent the drug abuse and the alcohol abuse? Mainly, there are many methods. First is avoid undue peer pressure. Undue peer is nothing but the same age group. When the parents keep on comparing the children about the same age group, so that is one of the bad sign where the people get addicted. Let the children develop their habit, let the children have good habits and develop their nature individually. Education, counseling, by good education, good counseling, the people can lose their stress so that they can avoid this drug and alcohol abuse. Seeking help from parents and peers. Parents should counsel the students, counsel their children. Parents should talk happily and then talk healthily with their children. Peers, friends, they can take good decisions and good suggestions from the friends. Looking for danger signs. So, whenever we look, when our friends, as a friend or as a teacher or a parent, when we are, or a relative, when we are looking at that particular child is getting addicted to tobacco or alcohol or drug, we have to inform to their elders so that they'll guide them, they'll counsel them. Finally, if all this is lost, then seeking professional and medical help, taking the children to psychiatrists or psychologists, like where the people can treat them, rehabilitation centers where the people can treat them which are addicted to drug and alcohol abuse. So, this is about the human health, and this is a very big chapter, very important chapter, but we have 3 questions definitely which we are going to get in the examination, but most probably we are going to get the same questions from the NCERT. So, please go through each and every line of NCERT carefully. You can easily attempt all these questions in the NEET examinations. Thank you so much. Have a good day and all the best for your NEET examinations. Thank you so much.